A turning point. Definition. A great event with the explosive impact of altering the trend of man's life on our planet. Cause. An idea spread throughout a people. Impact. Dramatically changed the course of history. On August 6, 1945, the Enola Gay dropped the first bomb over Hiroshima, Japan, population 350,000. 3 days later, a second atomic bomb was dropped on Nagasaki, Japan, population 270,000. These were the first and last atomic bombs ever used on an enemy. It was all it took to end World War II, with 150,000 instantly killed from the blast. 5 years later, the death toll from the bombs was recorded at 275,000, more than 50% of the city's populations combined. The peace was finally restored between the United States and Japan, but the world had entered a nuclear age.
This was all started in 1939, when Germany, under the rule of Adolf Hitler, invaded Poland. Many Jewish scientists living in Germany, such as Albert Einstein and Enrico Fermi, came to America seeking refuge from the Nazis.
Fermi had created fission. He just didn't know it. And so he got strange results, and nobody could make sense of it. Nobody thought that fission was possible. It wasn't even that they thought that fission was impossible. It was so obviously stupid that nobody bothered to think about it.
With help from Leo Szilard, Lee Meitner, and Otto Frisch, nuclear fission was developed, tested, and achieved. This was the process of splitting an atom's nucleus by bombarding it with neutrons. This creates a chain reaction of neutrons bombarding other nuclei. They soon realized that this is both an exciting and terrifying achievement. If this knowledge is put into the wrong hands, they could have a worldwide crisis, bigger than each of the world wars. Yet, with the Germans discovering nuclear fission, Leo Szilard decided that he needed to warn the president. With help from an old friend, Albert Einstein, President Roosevelt was detailed and cautioned on the possibilities of an atomic bomb. Yet it would take a much greater disaster to convince the president and other scientists the true threats of nuclear fission. On December 7, 1941, Japanese planes roared in the skies over Pearl Harbor, dropping bombs on the United States Navy. This was the final catalyst that brought America into World War II.
With war raging throughout the world, President FDR realized the more than potential threats on America. Acting quickly, he began funding for developing an atomic weapon, codenaming it the Manhattan Project. He appointed Leslie R. Groves, a renowned Army general, as the head of the project. He instantly took charge of the operation by creating a huge workforce of both scientists and citizens.
When Leslie Groves was appointed as head of the project, he sort of had this view, and he was an extremely energetic, brusque character, that if there was any possible way to do it, you try it. If there were 3 different ways, you try all 3. You don't ask what's better, you do everything, because the project is so important. So
the next step was getting the right element, uranium-235. Almost the same as its more abundant counterpart, uranium-238, uranium-235 is more reactive and is better suited for nuclear fission. Yet separating the two would prove to be one of the first major challenges. Many scientists began coming up with separation techniques, such as gaseous diffusion and more commonly, electromagnetic separation.
The money was continuously flowing from the government to the project, as test sites, power plants, and engineering facilities were going up throughout the country. Fueled by the fears of Germans getting ahead in the weapons race, scientists Robert Oppenheimer and Leslie R. Groves worked hard to keep the construction flowing. In fact, entire cities sprung up, such as Oak Ridge, Tennessee. The main goal of the city was to develop and create enough uranium-235 for a bomb, codenaming it Little Boy. Meanwhile, in Hanford, Washington, scientists were pursuing another path of nuclear fission with the element plutonium. It turned out that creating plutonium was a lot quicker and easier than uranium-235. They had made enough plutonium for a test bomb as well, codenaming it Fat Boy. Finally, on July 16, 1945, their work paid off as the world got its first look into nuclear power at a desolate test site in Los Alamos, New Mexico. As the scientists watched, 20 miles away from the bomb, bets were being made on how powerful and large the explosion would be, or if it would even work. This was the first time nuclear fission would be put to the test. There were even fears that the fission process would be uncontrollable, and the whole world would explode. After the bomb dropped, there was a bright flash, almost blinding to the naked eye. The amount of power and intensity of the blast was higher than anyone's predictions. Right then, both the scientists and the workers knew that the world had entered a new age, one that could bring death, peace, and prosperity. They knew life would not be the same, and that their work would be a turning point in history. The war was still raging between the United States and Japan, and everyone now knew the solution.
And at one point, Burns said to Truman, "Mr. President, what will you tell the American people at your impeachment in 1946? When they find out that you had a weapon that could have ended the war and saved American lives, and you decided not to use it." I think that probably was the decisive argument for Truman.
The Japanese had started this war and fought ferociously throughout it. It was our time to show who really had the upper hand. With Japan still not backing down, the second bomb, Fat Man, was sent to Nagasaki, Japan.
Let there be no mistake. We shall completely destroy Japan's power to make war. If they do not now accept our terms, they may expect a rain of ruin from the air, the like of which has never been seen on this earth.
With both the cities destroyed, the final death toll was recorded at 275,000, but the war was over. This was a major turning point for the time because there was peace throughout the world. The rebuilding process of countries could now begin, yet the threat of nuclear fission would never be cleaned up. The Soviets were quick to the draw and began developing their own nuclear weapons right after us. Even today, countries continue to get their hands on the power of nuclear fission. This shows how much of a turning point the Manhattan Project really was. With the amount of energy released by fission, why not make it a fuel source for a greater cause? Scientists began working on developing nuclear power plants, one of the major benefits of nuclear energy. These could power entire cities with little pollution to the environment.
The development of science from there was remarkable across the board. So, for example, before Los Alamos, there were no scientific computers. In fact, in Los Alamos, computing was done by people with adding machines and slide rules, and they sort of figured out how a computer would work, except instead of having transistors do it, like I would hand you a piece of paper, you tell you, you're supposed to do this and hand it to him and you do that. That's a computer program. So computational science was sort of invented there. But the other thing is sort of big science, science at the scale with large amounts of money started there. It had a tremendous effect on science afterwards. Forgetting for the moment about the politics of it, scientists went from being a very small, unimportant part of our culture to a very big one, and that happened there.